Hey guys, and welcome back to the You Know the Drill podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration from the top leaders in dentistry. Join us, Faris and Robbie, on our journey as we strive to help you become more intuitive and successful in your dental careers. Are you ready to level up your dentistry? Then you're in the right place. Let's drill down into the latest trends and leading opinions in dentistry together. If you want to keep up to date with all our episodes, follow our podcast on your platform of choice, and make sure you check out our TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube over at You Know the Drill podcast. Thank you.
So today we've got a very special guest joining us, Dr. Jabir Kazi, and he's the founder of the Dentistsofinsta Instagram page, which has over 80,000 followers and counting. He's recently set up his own squatter practice in Deansgate Dental Studio in Manchester, and he highlights the varied lives of dentists across the globe and has created a community showcasing the best of our toothy comrades everywhere. So today he'll be talking us through how he set up and grew his page, his vision regarding it, and his view on community within the dental world, which we know too well can be very lonely. So without further ado, welcome on Dr. Kazi.
Hi guys, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic to have you on. We've been following your page, seeing some great dentists from Australia to America, and it's really been great to see everyone's stories. And we just kind of wanted to ask a little bit about you. Can you just give us a little insight into yourself and your journey into the dental world?
Yeah, I guess I come from a very medical family, so it was pretty almost nailed on. Bearing in mind that I got all the grades and all that kind of thing that we were at. I was going to end up in medicine, dentistry, or something allied. So it is a lot of what I knew growing up, and then it turns out that a lot of the things that I was good at were also pushing me down that direction. I wanted to be a footballer, but that's not going to happen. Let's be honest.
The knees, yeah.
And then got into Newcastle Uni with my cousin in the same year, so we had a really good time there. Probably too much of a good time. Took the scenic route through with some extra resits and exams along the way, but we got through, and it's held us in good stead going forward. So pretty grateful for that. Then I've been working, did my FD, did 6 months of NHS work. COVID hits, and I never went back. So that's maybe the long and short of it. But we also have all the other bits and pieces with regards to Dentistsofinsta and all that's been sort of laced in between. So it's been pretty jam packed, and I think I've only done 5 years since graduation, so it's pretty. I'm not like an experienced dentist in the grand scheme of things, but I like to sort of think of myself in sort of marketing terms as a growth hacking my way forward, as opposed to taking a slow route. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone, but trying to push myself to the boundary at all times. I think that's something that's kind of key to what I'm about.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of kind of phrasing it. So you mentioned this idea like growth hacking. Are there particular, aspects within the profession that you think you've tried to prioritize more than others?
I'm someone that I look at how things are done, and I try and look at how things are done in alternate career pathways outside of medicine and dentistry, because we've got a pretty dogmatic approach. For example, the one thing that I've had real sort of issues with is doing your time on the NHS, for example. I would raise this question, because I wanted to be a footballer. Let's just put that back out there and use that, run with that as an example. You've got 100 shots to take to practice, and I'm going to tell Faris, you can take as long as you like to take those. And I'm going to tell Robbie, you've got 30 seconds to hit all 100. Who's going to get better? It's pretty bloody obvious when you think about it.
Fine. Yeah.
So,
that's a really good point. Kind of gives you a different perspective on things, and it's also a message to just kind of take your time with things and that way you're going to really see improvement, as opposed to just rushing through things, ticking boxes, and not really learning
Yeah.
too much. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's
let's
exactly it.
yeah, fine. I think our listeners are really going to want to hear about the reason as to why you started the Dentist of Insta Instagram page. So could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I took the long route through uni, which meant that I had a November reset. So
Mm.
I didn't start FD in September with the rest of my cohort.
Mm.
It was either wait till September or wait till early entry in March. And I was like, well, I've got 8 months or 5 months.
Mm.
I'm never going to get 8, 9 months again where I can do whatever the hell I like. So yeah, I applied for both, but then when it came to it, I got like Yorkshire. So I was like, I'm going to go there. I'm from Yorkshire, and I took that option. But that leaves me with let's call it 9 months, because you start on the 1st of September. 9 months where I'm like, well, I've got nothing to do. So essentially, what happened was I went traveling. But beforehand, I was getting really into the gym, getting back in shape after finals. I just let things drop. And at that time, in sort of gym land, in that world of being on gym Instagram, there were a lot of feature pages for people trying to do lifts and before and after pics. Not like
Mm.
big timers, just rando people. Like straight up, some random person in the gym would send his video into an account, and the guy would look at it and be like, yeah, pretty cool, stick it up, and some people would follow you and stuff like that. And I was like, well, why the hell are we not doing this for like dentists? There was iDentistry at the time, and there was a couple of others sharing cases, but once you've seen one like before and after Invisalign or bonding, you've kind of seen them all
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way, unless you've got like a personal connection with someone. It's pretty boring. Because how many times can you say, "Oh, well done, Brian"? Bro, nice one. When you're looking at the same case 100 times, unless they're doing something like George the dentist, where he's putting in tips and tricks and stuff like that. In which point you're getting a bit more out of it. So I took that sort of feeling and was like, well, let's do dentists and let's do something a bit more interesting with it. Let's find out who you are and why you're interesting. And that was supposed to be more of a introduce yourself to the community and what's your journey been and what makes you an interesting person as opposed to what makes you a good dentist.
See, I really want to focus on the community as we go down this podcast, but you mentioned a couple really interesting traits, and it kind of leads back to this idea of growth hacking. So with you kind of looked at an alternative form of media. So you looked at, how there were these edits for the gym, identifying that this content's quite popular. Let's see if that can be replicated in dentistry. So kind of in like a more of an abstract sense, what makes you look at something and see the value in it? What kind of trained that muscle in your head?
I have a short attention span, I would say. Not in terms of like I can't concentrate on something for a long time, but more in terms of if you're really not stimulating me, I'm on to the next thing. I think it's maybe when I went into uni, we're the Reddit generation, I would say. So constantly strolling since something vaguely interesting pops up. So we went through uni just scrolling. Probably the precursor to TikTok, I guess, in a word format. But you pick up a lot of interesting information, which means that you've got a little bit of a broader look at the world. Whereas I think a lot of people were, again, I was a bad student, so this really helped. Being a bad student at this point is really in my favor because I was just doing other stuff. So don't worry, guys, if you're terrible when it comes to exams. As long as you're not perforating teeth and killing patients, you're all good.
I can hear like the ominous groans of every tutor right now being like, no, make sure that
Look where I am. I mean,
yeah, no, that's fair.
so yeah, I think that's part of it, and because I've seen all these different things, I've gotten into sort of different hobbies as a result. So I've tried my hand at drop shipping. I've tried my hand at videography, dronography, content writing, SEO, coding, a crap load of things basically. So understanding the basics of 101 different things and then going, well, I can implement this or that into dentistry or now running a practice or whatever it might be. So it gives you more strings to your bow. It's really sort of a bit cliche, but it's honestly so true.
Yeah, it's good to see, because I think it's kind of like a concept in business as well. Like if you're trying to develop something, you might look at an alternative industry and see what went right. Or let's say, you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to be really successful in what you're doing. There's always this idea of learn from what you see. Like if you walk into a Starbucks, like what is the environment you've been put in? How have they incentivized you to buy, like the biggest, size instead of the medium, because they priced it in a competitive way. And it's nice to hear that that's kind of being adapted to dentistry, which in my view, and I don't know if Robbie, you agree, but it can seem a little bit archaic at times. Like we're a little bit behind other industries, and that's mostly because we have that luxury of having a good enough income where if you don't push the boat too much, you'll probably live quite a good life. But it's nice to hear someone that's quite young and you're thinking, okay, well, that can happen, but what are the alternatives? How can we kind of catalyze our growth? Which is kind of what I'm getting from what you mentioned in your story.
Yeah, I think there's different ways of looking at it. This is a worldwide profession. I think you're right with that sort of comment when it comes to UK dentistry. We are 20 years behind some parts of the world, I would say. Apart from some of the really top end private practices, most people are working in the 1980s and 90s with their clinical practice to start with, and also customer service. So I think there are things to take from a lot of different industries to really push on and onwards and upwards. But that's maybe a societal thing. That's maybe a regulatory thing. GDC, CQC, all these kinds of things. There's a lot of things that you have to sign up to do a practice, which maybe kill the spark if you're not careful, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of those things as well. It's like defensive dentistry. This whole idea of people are, well, as clinicians, you kind of get scared into this thought process of, if I try something different, there's risk reward, and the risk is just too high when it comes to any regulatory board that's peering over your shoulder. And yeah, that unfortunately, that's the killer of creativity, which seems to be something really prevalent in the UK scene, at least. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear something like this, because I think a lot of the time, as dentists, we get confined into this little box of, be a good clinician. If you're really successful, you might start doing a little bit of, promo, like some Insta ads, something like that. But it sounds here that there's a lot more flexibility, but maybe the problem is there's a bit of fear that strikes into the heart of a dentist that tries to veer off the common path.
What do you guys think about the kind of people who are let into dental school?
I'll let Robbie start, and then I'll lead after.
I know this is your podcast.
Fair,
I'm asking a question.
I haven't.
No, I like it.
I don't really give too much thought to it. I think there is a rigorous interview and selection process. You've got to do all these entry exams and interviews and personal statements and whatnot. Maybe there are aspects which could be improved, but yeah, if I'm honest with you, I just haven't given it that much thought, so I don't have a well-developed answer, unfortunately.
I think a lot of dental students, I think one thing that's in common is they are intelligent. Like, there's a good level of natural intelligence, and to that regard, everyone's of sound mind. Like, you very rarely, in my experience, like everyone that you come across, kind of knows what they're doing to a good basic level. I think where things kind of start to falter is where it comes to like independent thinking, or being a little bit weird and wacky and creative, which is something you find really commonly in other. So a lot of the time, like at university, I'll go to like a society event, like that's not related to dentistry. I'll speak to someone doing like PPE, or someone that's doing law or economics, and you'll talk to them, and the way they speak and the events that they go to and the experiences that they have seems so much more varied than like dental colleagues, and even medics as well. So that's kind of the main thing that I've noticed is, in my opinion, like to kind of get ahead of the curve, in a lot of other professions, you really need to grind. Like, you need to get that internship, you need to work, you need to go and make sure that you build your portfolio. I feel like in dentistry, you don't have as much of a drive. It's like once you're in, it's like you're probably going to be okay. And in that sense, I feel like it's a little bit of a suppressed profession. There you go. That's kind of the best way I'd describe it.
Yeah.
That's my view, at least.
It's interesting, as I would say, the most important thing for a dentist, especially in this country, would be decision making.
Mm,
So that just takes an ironclad sort
mm,
of mental response. I don't think they select for that at all. And I think that's a
yeah.
lot of the issue um, that's happening with young dentists. Intelligent people, brilliant. Maybe even technically skilled, great.
Mm,
But if you can't make a decision because you're worried at every
mm,
turn, you're the wrong person in the wrong job. And that's not a knock on you. And I think that's something that there are people who are just good decision makers. If someone's crying, screaming, kids, whatever in the room, you still make the right decision. Or you explain the options that are available and the different sort of
mm.
sequelae that can come from each path that you can take. I think that's the real skill. And I don't think it's selected for. And I think if you're someone who's struggling at the moment um, with those kinds of things, maybe you need to look at that side of your practice and see whether there's something you can improve there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of skills that get reinforced when you're going through interview stages, like your leadership, your ability to communicate. But making hard decisions is something you do every day as a dentist. Like what's that radiolucency actually caries, or what treatment option should I do, or how am I actually going to deal with this case? Like this patient's come in, they're not happy with what I've done, and you're right enough to say that maybe that muscle isn't really trained while you're at dental school. And I think it's to the point of you're protected a lot of the time,
Yeah.
which is fair enough. And as such, even if you do make a decision, it's like, well, I have, I call it like mum and dad, like you have your tutor. They're telling you, okay, actually, you should do this instead, or you should think about this. Yeah, it's interesting. I think when it comes to, young people in dentistry, especially myself and Robbie, we're entering our final year now at uni. It's cool to see how people, like, every single year is a little bit different. And one of the cool things that we're kind of seeing emerging a lot, and kind of like circling back to what we mentioned, is this whole idea of getting yourself out there and being a bit of a dental influencer, or trying to post content online to bring yourself out of the common folk of just being a regular dental student. So on that kind of regard, you started your Dentistsofinsta page, and you must get a lot of really interesting people talk to you, or must interact with a lot of interesting dentists globally. So what would you kind of say has been one of the more interesting experiences you've had?
There's a lot. I
Hmm.
would say Dr. Graves has been a really interesting person to get to know.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID time, we did a podcast. He came on mine, and there was no teeth talk, but you could
Yeah.
see that there was something a bit more about him.
Mm.
And I think that's something that really sort of piques my interest when I see someone doing something out of the not weird,
Yeah.
because let's clarify that there's people who are doing things correctly but are just something more.
Mm.
And there are people that are doing things which are just weird and it's wrong. Two different things. I'm talking about the way he presents himself,
Mm.
completely unique towards anyone else. So that was one person that comes to mind. And then you have people, I would say, supremely talented like Rizal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we did a couple of live sessions on Instagram early doors of COVID,
Mm.
and just talking to him and seeing how his mind works is a completely different way. But he sees himself as an ordinary dentist who just
Yeah.
practices and doesn't rush. That's essentially what he said
Mm.
about himself. You could boil it down to, I don't do anything differently to anyone else. I just take my time. I don't rush, and uh, we attempt to save things that other people won't. And
Mm.
essentially, if you try and start to save things, you'll eventually succeed in saving things that other people can't. It's as simple as that, really. And what is savable and not savable in dentistry is down to your skill. If you never practice that skill, you'll never be anything more than an extraction dentist.
Fine. you kind of talked about decision making and having that something extra. So among your more influential guests that you've had feature on your page, what would you say is the one trait that has been most apparent commonly throughout those interesting dentists that you've had featured?
Everyone's got a base level of talent.
Hmm.
I think that's there. And whether they were a dentist or not, they would have been more talented than the average. Persistence is the other thing I would say. I think that's my thing as well. Let's have a little look now. I'll just quickly get the Instagram up. Do you know anyone else who would have posted 6,500 times?
No.
Different people. That means 6,500 different conversations with people that I actually
Yeah.
posted, and probably 10 times that number of conversation of stuff that I didn't post. No one's doing that. And I've done that whilst doing my normal life, just randomly as well, just carrying on. I do everything everyone else does. So persistence is probably the thing that stands me apart from anyone else, I would say. And also those other guys as well, because most people will have a great idea at some point in their life. You would hope. But whether you've got the persistence, whether you've got the skill set, whether you've got the balls to pull it, whatever that thing might be, off is completely down to you at the end of the day, and whether you can garner the right connections to make it work. Because I think that's a lot of the world these days. If you have the right connections, you can get someone to help you with whatever that you're trying to achieve. And if you don't have those connections, it's not going to be as easy. It can still work, but as you can imagine, having a little leg up here and there is going to be a huge sort of helping hand. And that's probably what I would say is the some of the main ingredients. It's never just one thing. It's an accumulation of life's work and every small decision that you've made, but being calculated. And I think what a lot of people these days do is they're mindlessly and aimlessly going through life. I would say that 99% of what I do has a target outcome to it. Whether it's something I enjoy or don't enjoy, either way, there's always something where I'm gaining something, or I'm, I have like a plan in mind where it's going to lead me.
Okay. I like that. So it's kind of idea of like discussing perseverance, grit, determination, all really common traits that you usually find in like highly successful people across different industries. And what I want to kind of hone in on a little bit there is you kind of mentioned this idea of having your target plan. So especially for someone that's like a young dentist, dental student, or even a dentist that's established, that's kind of set in their ways, what are some of the ways that you kind of prioritize your outcomes, and how did you build that framework over time?
This is like a philosophical question almost, because what do you want your life to look like? I'm going to start sounding like a top G, Andrew Tate, whatever you want to call it. What do you want your life to look like? Once you can answer that question honestly, then you can work backwards from that goal, right? If you don't know what you want in life, and you don't know what a success looks like to you, because it's going to be different from me to you to the next person, you can never have a plan of action, because what are you planning for? And this is the same with anything. If you're single and you're looking to get married or whatever, we're all brown here, so our parents are probably in our ears and all that. So if you don't know what that girl looks like as an archetype in your head, you're going to end up with the wrong person, and you're going to have to start again at some point. Whereas if you know exactly what you want from your life and what it's going to look like, or ideally, or sort of the acceptable parameters for success in your mind, you can say, well, I want to live here. I want to live in this kind of a house or flat. I want to work this many days. I want to earn this much. I want to wear this kind of clothes, etc., etc., etc. And you go, well, that's going to cost me X per year to do, right? How do I get that? Okay, what can I make as a dentist? What can I do from this? What can I do from that? It's really working with the end in sight. And I think that's the same, for example, where's it gone? Yeah. I've just finished the Baird course, and it's plan with the end in sight. So if you're an implant dentist, right, so there are very few courses which are worth going on. Most implant dentists in the world, I don't know about in the UK, but I think it's a significant portion, are slamming the implant in where the bone is. It's going to come out wrong. You're going to get exposed threads. It's going to be in the bone. It's going to be in the palatal wall. It's going to be anteriorly inclined. That means that you're going to get ridge lap, which means that your crown is overlapping the ridge. It's not hygienic design. It's going to get pericoronitis because you're going to have to do a cemented option. It's because you're not thinking, where's this going to end up? So turn it on its head, not going, where's the bone? Go, where do I want to be when I finish? I want a tooth to look like a tooth and I don't want it to get pericoronitis. Okay, I've got to tilt it back. I've got to retrocline this thing. I've got a bone graft. I've got a soft tissue graft. And then you'll get some better outcomes. And if you're watching, I hope that's a good explanation of implant dentistry. If not, feel free to take my diploma off me.
Just got to add him in the description of this episode.
Interesting. Does that make sense? If you don't know where you're going, you can't have a plan. I like to say I don't have dreams, I have goals, because dreams are goals without a plan. Oh yeah, I want to marry. I don't know who's that. Someone that's famous. That one from Wednesday, whatever. Everyone's like dying over these.
Jenna Ortega.
Yeah. All right. How are you going to do it, mate? You haven't got a plan. It's not going to happen. Or
it's I think it's a really refreshing. It's a really refreshing mindset, I think, that you've kind of just brought to the table, kind of working with the end in sight, and also your previous point that you mentioned regarding like always working with a target outcome in mind as well, so that you gain something from each of your experiences or each of your actions. And I have one question that I want to kind of hear your thoughts about. Is a lot of people feel like they're like, too young, or they're unsure of what their goal is, and they still want to discover more. So there's a lot of variability, but around what time would you say you should kind of have your end goal specifically for your career in dentistry in mind by? Is it after dental school? Is it during dental school?
Get through dental school, because that's difficult enough as it is, and I failed enough exams, and I can tell you that. Get through dental school. But then I would disregard your career. Look at your life.
All right.
Let's say you apply for what's it called, a DFT, and you're like, oh, I want to do GPT. Is it GPT?
Yeah, the 2
year program.
They keep changing it. Right? I'm making chat GPT.
Whatever it's called. I did actually put your question through chat GPT to see what
nice.
Come up. It wasn't bad, to be honest. But no, let's say that you get a really amazing practice, but it's in bloody Cornwall, and like you're the brownest guy alive, and there's no halal food, for example, and you're just going to have the deadest year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the point? What's the point? Live your life, because you're only going to get it once. Dentistry is going to be something that you slowly, for some people, quickly for other people, progress in. But again, don't get sucked in by this doing your time nonsense. Work slowly, work correctly, and you'll improve as time goes on. If you learn how to do something quickly, badly, what's the point? You're just going to get problems. So I would disregard the career almost. Don't actually disregard it, but like work out what you want from your life first. If all your mates are in Bradford, like mine are, or have been, they're all getting married now, or they're all, moving to different countries because, this country's collapsing. Go where your mates are, because, at the end of the day, you want to spend some time with people you actually like. If you don't know anyone in some certain place, all right, you can go into a gym and you find some good bros there or whatever, but at the end of the day, you're going to be out of there and it's going to be like, okay, I've just wasted a whole year of my life, found nothing there. So I would start with how you want to live your life to start with.
And kind of build your career based on that.
Around it. Yeah.
Yeah, around it, yeah.
Okay. I think that's one way, but looking at it, I would also say look at your closest friends, or alleged friends closely. Because if they're people who are going places and you are someone who, or people who are not going places and you're someone who wants to, they're only going to hold you back. Thankfully, I've got incredible sort of like-minded friends, so it's not an issue for me, but I have seen people who want to move forward in life, but the friends are dragging them back. And I think that's really important, because Same thing, they say don't be the smartest person in the room. If you're in a room full of business people, business owners, etc., 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 you're going to pick up that side of the world. If you're just in a room full of dentists, that's all you'll pick up. Maybe that's what you want, maybe it's not. If you're in a room full of people who just smoke shisha and go and rev the cars up and down roads, that's all you'll ever be.
Yeah. I like this kind of notion of more of a bird's eye view kind of thing. And I think it's really, I know you said it quite a few times, but it is refreshing because unfortunately, and I feel like a lot of people that will listen to this will relate to this, there's this kind of notion of do things right down, a straight line, straight path. Like, do your NHS, get the hours in, get the reps in, do a lot of NHS, give that time to build your skills. And then after that, try and get a nice mixed practice job, try and get a good private job, dip your toe into different things. But there always seems to be some kind of linearity. And it's always based on this idea of dentistry at its core. And what we've kind of had a discussion about here is kind of flipping on its head and saying, well, dentistry is always going to be there. You've got your BDS, you've got your qualification, well done. What do you actually want to do with it? What is your life going to look like? Are you going to ensure that you give yourself an extra day on the week to build on the passion that you've had for the last 10 years of, like, I don't know, doing art? Or do you want to build your own business? Do you have particular, interests that you want to build upon? So I think it's nice to hear from someone like yourself, because people, and this is what I feel a lot of people that will listen to this, especially like young dentists or young students, are going to think is it's just like scared to take the plunge. Like, what if I do it and it all goes wrong? And it's nice to see someone's doing it. And actually, kind of on that note, how have you kind of dealt with setbacks? Because I'm sure, especially when you're trying new things and you're kind of building your new path, if no one's done it before, a lot of it is novel knowledge. And of course, a lot of mistakes get made. So on your kind of path where you've tried to, have this lateral thinking, how have you dealt with the setbacks that you've had?
I think my major setbacks were in university, let's be honest. Failing years is something that really crushes you at some point, at some level, because you see your cohort or your friends moving onwards, and you're stuck back another year. So I think I got hit early second year. Hated that year for a number of different reasons, but very little of it was dentistry up until sort of the very end of the year. So I think going through something like that, and literally coming out the other end, so persevering again through it, just going, I started this, I'm not going to quit, carry on, do the work, and then oh, actually I'm fine, and I'm just a year behind, but I don't know whether anyone's currently that I was going through university within the first year that I was in, the initial cohort. There's certainly some people like Gopinda doing really well, people like Hanan in London doing really well, and Kripesh doing really well. So there are people doing really, really well, but they're doing well in one way and I'm doing well in a whole other way now. So it's not made one blind bit of a difference, really. In some ways, having failed exams has opened up a door, because I know where I'm starting a Dentistsofinsta page if I'd passed and 2 months later and going into foundation training. Probably don't end up doing private dentistry to the level that I have been. Certainly not taking on referrals after essentially 18 months of clinical practice for special interest dentistry with endo. If I had gone through your linear path, as you want to call it. So I think that's one thing. And I think the COVID break has helped immensely, because I used that time to one-on-one interview every specialist I could get my hands on, and then walked away with all their knowledge. So I guess from a clinical perspective, that's where I've growth hacked my way, if you want to call it that, to another level, where you could see the day that I finished when COVID struck, day I came back a year and a bit later. So I didn't go back, when everyone else did. I carried on doing what I was doing with the Instagram and the podcast, etc., for a whole 14 months, I think. Came back and I was taking referrals in a practice that got 18 surgeries. So you can sort of draw your own conclusions from that, as to the way that you can do things if you just understand the basics and refuse to cut corners.
Fine.
I don't know if that
Yeah.
I forgot the question now, but I hope that was useful.
No. Honestly, it's good to just hear kind of the thinking process and what goes on there. It's interesting to get grips. So
Yeah, and I think just as a penultimate question is, what do you want your legacy to be? Throughout life, throughout the people who follow you, through people who want to be successful like yourself and try to emulate you. What do you want your message to be, and what do you want your legacy to be to them?
I think that's a
Very deep
difficult question.
question.
It's a
Yeah.
deep question. Yeah, I think from dental sort of point of view, it's very easy to answer. With everything that I've done, building a platform for dentists, you'll now see on Dentistsofinsta some before and after cases, and those are only going to be from people who I employ as associates. So
Mm.
I've picked up some incredibly talented young dentists, or one slightly older dentist as well, but people who I believe I can give a really great platform to. So pushing their careers onwards into almost a global sort of level. So supporting careers in that way is one thing. Continuing to sort of uncover interesting people is another. I am gonna, once the practice opens, I am gonna restart my podcast, but rebranded. And we're gonna. I get bored talking about teeth. I'll be honest, because there's only so many times you can say
yeah.
the same thing and answer the same questions unless something significant sort of has changed or come out, with new research or new techniques or something like that. And having done like 150 to 200 sort of Instagram lives and interviews, I feel like I've covered a lot of that side of things. Probably
Yeah.
implant dentistry is the only place I've really not smashed it. But I've only just finished my sort of basic training in implants, so maybe that's something I'll do. But outside of dentistry, I would say that's a difficult one to answer, because that's down to sort of personal things which maybe aren't for discussing on air. Sort of family goals, all that kind of thing. But I think sort of from my public sort of profile, it would definitely be pushing forward good causes. There's something that we'll do with the practice there. Again, can't really announce that yet because we haven't finalized it, but there's a lot of stuff in the works that I
Yeah.
think would be part of that.
Yeah.
But I think I'd like a blue tick from my personal ego. He wouldn't.
That's very fair. That's very fair.
But to continue and build upon what we've
Yeah.
done, and I think during building the practice, I really have sort of dropped off a little in terms of the Dentistsofinsta side of things and the podcast side of things, because my focus has been split on actually working and dealing with a lot of paperwork, which is bloody boring, guys. Just there's no need for it.
No, I've never heard someone be excited to do paperwork.
No. So yeah, I think sort of getting back
Yeah.
on the horse with that, and then uncovering more of these interesting personalities, and then the podcast that we're going to restart, but it's going to be more of a success-led podcast. So we haven't quite decided on a name. I was thinking like the 0.01% or the 99th percentile, something like that. Just kind of showcase interesting or successful people and traits sort of from alternate backgrounds, not just dentistry, because there are people who are successful
Yeah.
in loads of different ways.
Brilliant. Amazing. Sounds like some really, really interesting projects for people to follow you on, and we'll drop the socials at the end so they keep up with your journey. And kind of one last thing that we're trying to implement is we're trying to get unpopular opinions on success in dentistry. So this is one from one of our past guests who said, to be successful in dentistry, you need to be really good at a few things rather than good at a lot of things. What's your view on that?
Yeah, in a way, I would say yes, but it's down to the individual. Some people have just got a wide capacity to learn everything and be good at everything. So when I say, being off NHS dentistry, for example, if you're someone who's come out of university and has just no confidence in their skills, for whatever reason, didn't get enough contact time, you're going to be a bit slower than someone else, and there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe hang on in there for a while until you feel a little bit more comfortable with the absolute basics, caries, endpoints, and stuff like that. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, to be honest. I don't know if that's even unpopular.
Yeah.
I would say that you might even see me being non-clinical after a few years, and purely being someone, a cheerleader for all these amazing young dentists who, let's be honest, right? I'm good at root canals. I'm not the best in the world, but I would say I can knock out about 90% of what comes through my door without an issue, maybe 95%. Know my limits, and I'll refer on if I can't do it, or I'll say, look, potentially you can see a specialist. Was it a grand? Do you just have an implant instead? Up to you. So yeah, I would say maybe that's you might sort of see me saying, okay, well, I'm just going to do endo and implants, for example, and then bonding. I have one person who is incredible at bonding. I'm not going to let me even attempt it. Rehab work. I've got a guy called Riz Chowdhury who is incredible. You should probably get him on the podcast because he'll give you a different sort of flavor of the world. Lab tech with honors, done dentistry at Leeds. He gets rehab work from other dentists, and he's early 30s, so he's working at a whole other level to anyone else that I know in sort of the area. So am I going to do dentures anymore? Hell no, because he's way better.
Yeah,
I did a lot in the last year, so it's something that I was getting my hand in on. But going forward, having the what's the word, self-awareness to say, actually, somebody in the next room is just better at it than me. I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah.
So I guess, I wouldn't say that's really a controversial opinion. But again, it comes down to actually doing it well. You can say, oh, yeah, I'm a composite bonding guru. And I've seen some of them who are just, that's all they're doing. And it's dog, for want of a better word. So it comes with self-awareness. I would say self-awareness is one of the big things that you need to learn. And we come out of dental school, I've got BDS, huge ego. Some people just, leave it by the door and see if you're actually any good.
Fine. Yeah, no, it's thank you for your insight into that. And thank you as well for coming on today. Really appreciate your time. And it's been great getting into more detail on like your mindset, your success, your story. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers have really enjoyed it as well. So just to round off, make sure you follow Dr. Kazi's handles on Instagram. So we've got Dentistsofinsta and of course, Dr. Jabir Kazi. And of course, thanks for tuning into the the Drill podcast. As always, we are on a mission to learn from successful figures in dentistry and inspire dental students to become more confident and driven in their field, as well as dentists.
Brilliant. And we hope you found today's episode valuable and informative. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, follow our socials at the Drill podcast, and leave a review if you enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace out.